Is the person using the desk in your space actually the person paying for it? And if not, are you clear on who your customer really is? In this episode of Flex That Worx, you're joined by myself, Anne-Marie and Graham, and we're going to talk about the growing market that is business owners who are paying for employees to work from your space. Who's responsible for making that sale or bringing that business owner on board as a paying customer? Who's responsible for retaining them and making sure that employee stays with you for the long term, even if they change jobs? And what are you doing to really make sure business owners know you exist, that coworking is a valuable place for their employees to get work done? And can you actually support them to retain their staff for longer? Let's dive into it, Graham.
So, Marie, we've had a number of discussions with people, and I think there's an agreed kind of sentiment that the audience or the ICP, the people turning up at co-working spaces, is diversified, has kind of expanded and broadened. And what a lot of operators are saying now is they're starting to see people from well-known larger companies, employees of larger companies set up shop in co-working spaces. And just even looking at the spaces we operate within and the ones we visit regularly and everything else, it's interesting to consider who's paying the bill and to see all the return to office conversations happening, the idea of remote work, nomadic work, all these kind of things, hybrid work, all the same things in different shades. It's interesting, I think, to consider how important who's paying the bill is in the conversation with hub managers. Like there's ourselves, we have our team working across a number of co-working spaces. I understand co-working, I see the benefits of it. So whether you like it or not, working for Baseworks, I don't want to say enforce, but certainly going to let you pick the co-working space closest to you, pay the desk, because I see the benefit. And I also appreciate people want to work from home at times as well. But the key thing coming through in all the research is flexibility is what people want. So I'm bought into it. So I'm an easy person to I suppose to sell to from a hub manager perspective. But even with our own spaces, I see a number of people that work for larger companies but still pay the bill themselves. And I just wonder how, I suppose, resilient that membership is. If they were to change job, would the same, I suppose, I don't want to call it luxury, but would the same, benefit be afforded to them? And I just wonder, do a lot of companies still view the idea to work remotely or work from home? They still view that as a perk. And then there's the other side of it, is when you work for yourself as a freelancer, or early stage startup, can you save yourself a few bob? And then if there's money in the bank, business may not go as well as you'd like it to. All of a sudden, what's the easiest thing to cut? Unfortunately, it could be the co-working desk. I kind of retreat back to the box room in the house, and till sales pick up, and then I'll go. And we also see members. I've also seen members who could do it on a seasonal basis. So wedding photographer up to his eye teeth during the summer, comes back in and works on his other projects over the winter, and obviously has weddings and stuff like that. But during the summer, just the guy's on the road all the time. So just wondering, like from a hub manager perspective, what kind of things you could be, I suppose, considering the stakeholder, is paying, who pays the bill really that important?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose first off, we always say know your audience, know who you're selling to. And the other thing we talk about a bit is like, who's your next customer? So like, you might know your ICP, your ideal customer profile for now. But if you've kind of tapped up that market, is there another group of people available to sell to? And that is the business owner, And maybe that business owner is not local to you, I suppose. So just to start with the local business owners, because you'd fall into that category, right?
Mm-hmm.
Say the space that we work from because you're an advocate, you're a little bit not typical. Like what the space needed to do there was tick the boxes that you were looking for. So that's the first thing to do. That's the lowest hanging fruit as a person who's problem aware and solution aware, you know, like you knew what type of space you wanted your team to be able to work from, and you knew you had to go and check, obviously, that the space could tick the boxes. So that bit was the easiest thing for the hub manager to do. But from
Yeah.
there, if you're talking from the perspective of an operator, they need to be sure they have the things in place to be found and make a business owner feel like, yeah, that's the right place for my team to go and get work done, because that's what you care about. You don't care what coffee I'm drinking as such, but you do care that it's a space that's up to scratch and that I'd be happy to work from. Do you get me?
Yeah, I do. But I suppose for me, I think you've over-egged a part of it there. For me, like, Joe, I know, like, we're in a rural town in Ireland. There wasn't much choice, Emery. It was either get an
That's
office
unusual
myself.
though.
Do you know? Is it though? I mean, and but the thing is, the other point you're making
Yeah,
there
I'd
as well,
say
and
it is.
like you're right, and like you are right. But the other side of it then is, I'm not local to the other spaces that people work in. You know, so again, I am in that instance, I'm a distant stakeholder. But again, I suppose you're right. I'm coming to the market. Well, I know what I'm buying. I know what I'm looking for. I
Yeah,
know
I
the
don't
offering
think
I
you
want
know
from my
the
staff.
detail. Totally, totally. I don't think you know the detail of the spaces that the others on our team are working from, but you do know the concept of co-working, and you know the guys well enough that if they're not
Yeah,
happy in a space, you'll say, "Come here, just go and find another one," right?
yeah,
From in terms of like useful insights for operators, it's hard to sell to somebody you're not aware of. So just considering that audience is something that needs to be fleshed out. And in terms of when that person lands on your website, and I would imagine a business owner, if they're even managing this themselves, they want to get on and transact really quickly. Like they actually just want to be like, I just need a desk for,
yeah,
Jim Bob on my team. So they don't want to go and book a tour. They actually don't want to email you. They just want to see the pricing plans. And they
yeah,
probably just want to pick one. They're like, I know I need a dedicated desk. Let's go monthly to begin with. And, so I guess make it easy to do business, for that business owner if they're going to be the person paying the bills. The other audience member, that's who's paying the bills, but they're not the decision maker. Because if I said to you in the morning, I'm not happy in this space actually, and look, I've gone off and I've found an alternative, this space would lose that business. Not because they didn't treat you well, but because the member wasn't happy, the person.
yeah,
So you've got two very clear audiences and they need different things. I would say the person running the business needs to be, happy that their employee is happy there, can transact easily, paperwork, invoicing, whatever
yeah,
all stacks up, and that's the place is easy to do business with.
yeah,
And then the member obviously needs to be satisfied in the day to day,
yeah,
and work
yeah.
needs to be getting done there.
So I think we touch on this quite a bit, where like I still don't think co-working as accelerated as it has been for the last 5 years. I still don't think it's as mainstream a concept for the powers that be in the corporate world. So I still think there's a massive opportunity there to drive more remote and hybrid workers into co-working spaces. So I just wonder, could there be an element of educating the employee or the staff member, because I'm just thinking here, if I was working for another company in this space, but I went on the jobs market, got myself a job. When it comes to negotiating my package, should employees now start thinking about negotiating the fees for their co-working space into their package? I mean, that would make things so much easier for co-working spaces if you had people that were bought into it and had negotiated into their contract from the beginning, rather than what we're probably seeing now is, the return to office piece, and people are saying, I don't want to go back to the office. I want to work from home. You can't work from home. We want you in a professional environment. We want to make sure you're getting out and into the workplace effectively. How would you do that as a hub operator? Is that your role as a hub operator, or is that our role as an industry to promote that idea?
I think growing the awareness of co-working is everyone's job. And we've talked about like the addressable market that's there and that, can feel like everybody's fighting for the same clients. Those are aware that co-working exists. There's still loads of people in the locality, particularly if it's a small community, that don't know your space is there. Like I tell people I work here, some have heard of it, some haven't. It's kind of when you know, you know. And it's always your responsibility to be thinking about who is near your space, who could be in there, who isn't in there. I think probably the biggest gap and the piece that might be most useful for operators to start thinking about if they're not doing it already is like the conversation piece where it's almost an objection if you're in sales and somebody says, yeah, I know about co-working, it's not really for me. That's for freelancers.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
about repositioning and the education piece that they say, no, like you could totally come in. I know you're a 9 to 5er, you might be an accountant, you might be, doing whatever type of work that typically you wouldn't consider yourself to be a candidate for co-working. That's the shift. So
Yeah.
getting people to position themselves in their minds, see themselves as somebody who goes into a co-working space, particularly the places that are like innovation hubs and stuff. Entrepreneurship programs, like funded courses and stuff. There's a corporate environment in there somewhere for sure. There's 9 to 5 structures. It's stepping away from kind of the freelance model where you do have your photographer in kind of half the year and they're gone the rest of the year, and a lot of creative people in. I think it's becoming totally the norm for people to look for, as everybody likes to talk about, that third space or third place. And it's becoming the norm now for corporate workers to recognizing themselves that they can be one of those people that go in. But like marketing, it gets down to somebody literally seeing themselves in that place. So like, we've got colleagues working here. I call them colleagues and they're not even on our team, right? But like they're in the same building as us. And their employers are paying the bills for them. I don't think that's typical. Like one of the brands, we could name here, I don't think it's the case that that business is paying for everyone to be in co-working. They're definitely in Ireland. They're definitely in the US. So then do you have corporates who, like, it's a big conversation because you're a business owner with a team of a certain size. Are we talking about like corporate giants? Because I do know some of them are then taking brand partnerships with brand lords, with like bigger co-working brands too, right? So you're getting into contract deals and numbers of desks and offices, and that goes the other way again.
Talking ones and twos more than that. In that instance that you just described, it's more substituting, a floor, square footage. It's turning, it's going from overhead to variable cost, that kind of maneuver. And while they're probably trying to figure out their hybrid strategy, AI is coming in, are we hiring, are we doing a hiring freeze, all these kind of things. That's when those kind of arrangements come in and are very, very, very powerful. But I just, coming back to the ones and twos, which is kind of where I'm living on in my mindset, is that like, I think that traditional people managers, the ones that are kind of leaning in a preferred position of return to office, still see remote work or co-working even as a perk. And I think naturally they'll like, finish up within the workforce and all that kind of stuff at some point. But I just think, it could be a generational thing that will just work itself out eventually.
Alec, I mean, you've had people on the road for work, working in lobbies and airports, like since the advent of the 9 to 5. Do you know what I mean? So like, even if a manager is, at a ripe old age in their career, they should still understand if somebody comes to them and wants to go to a co-working space, like I would say. Is there an education piece that a local space can help with to get themselves more known? Yeah, 100%. And like, if you have the resource to do some extra marketing and build that bridge, you know what I mean? And educate them, yeah, fantastic. Like if you've got the space, I don't know how many operators have the room to do that, to put together like specific messaging to kind of bring people on the journey. And I think that as an employee, if it was the case that I was going to go and speak to my new manager, if it's a package you're putting together, you've got to be able to back up anything that you want to propose, So I'd see it as the job of the space to be doing their work really well, but I don't know that an operator needs to adapt what they're doing hugely to appeal to that audience. I do think it's about the outreach, considering that new audience and making sure they feel included. Like if your marketing is like, do you work for yourself? Are you sick of your home office? Come in for company. That's not going to reach your 9 to 5er,
Just coming on to I just think coming on to the maths of it again, if I'm a people manager and I want people in the office and someone comes to me with this proposal, a package, and they're looking for co-working for me to fund a co-working space. Even the maths there, if you're on a certain salary band in Ireland anyway, for instance, you're going to be paying anything from, for you to pay, let's say €250 for a desk. That means that you're going to have to probably earn in and around 500 at gross salary level, in order to afford that
Yeah.
€250
So here's a
on the end,
question.
Yeah.
If you weren't an advocate of co-working and I was new to the team and I was familiar with co-working and I said, come here, I actually have a desk with my current employer. I'd like to retain it. What would you need to hear? What would be the things that would come up in your mind that would almost block that sale, we'll say, or block me staying as a member?
So, I suppose just to finish my point there. So, with me having to earn the 500 to cover the 200, or the 500 to cover the 250, as a corporate or as a business, that 250 is an expense to the business, can be taken off, off the top line and whittle its way down to the bottom line and reduce your tax bill at the end of the year. So it's a straight up 250 if there's VAT involved and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, that's a straight swap or exchange, and all of that kind of stuff. So financially, it makes more sense for the employee, but as an employer, there's, you could, when it comes to package debates and stuff like that, you could lean on it being a perk and an advantage, and we're going to do this for you, and actually say, look, we'll give you this salary, but this is what but we'll pay for your desk as well. I don't think that's fair myself. I push back on that as an employee, but again, as you said, I'm a co-working advocate. But the maths are there. It's just more tax efficient for a company to pay the bill rather than an individual.
So you think that's something an operator can leverage in their messaging, or?
Yeah, if you could maybe explain that theory. So a lot of people should understand that anyway. If you could explain that theory and arm them with that type of spiel, if you like. The other side of it then is, Anne-Marie, is like if you take on remote workers that are going to work from home, you ship the kit down to them. So you have to make sure that they're not working at the kitchen table.
Working at home,
friendly chair.
Working at home is not free, like.
No, it's not. It's not.
Yeah.
And then like. So there's the whole, if they leave the business during their, let's say, their probation period, that's going to be an awful pain in the backside to get all that kit back to where, like, I mean, a former employer of mine had a warehouse of furniture that came out of branches, and it's just out of bank branches, and it was just full of old furniture going nowhere. So there's that, like, take back a laptop, you take back chairs. Where do they live? It's grand. You can order them. You can order them online, and it'll get shipped down wherever. But if they get sent back, where do they go? So
to a new co-working space.
You don't have that issue with a co-working space. Like, it's ready made. The heat, the light, it's all covered. The chairs are good. Your staff are going to get in and talk to people as well, whether they like it or not. So they're not like, there's a whole mental health aspect to it. That's a podcast in itself.
If I was an operator in the morning, the reason I would go out and actively speak to business owners and put it on their radar is that we're a great place for their employees to come in. One of the reasons I would do that is because of the longevity of a contract. If you're relying solely on entrepreneurs and freelancers and people working for themselves, there's a little bit less stability typically in that type of work. So, particularly somebody on a rolling monthly, you want to be sure that they're going to stay with you. Whereas if you built your customer base on, maybe 8 brands that have a worker or 2 with you, that's a pretty solid foundation for your revenue for the year.
Yeah.
And in a locality, if you can do anything at all to add value to a business, whereby, particularly if we have a great event space. So a lot of times people come in and run courses and trainings and all that type of thing. So like, again, it's just additional ways to like promote that brand then or add value back. So rather than just saying, your workers are at home at the moment, pay us a couple of $100 per head for an employee and get them in, here's all the value that you're going to get as a result of partnering with us. Here are the ways that we can promote your brand and endeavour to keep your employees happy, particularly if it's people that are valuable to the business. That's any business owner is going to want ways to increase their retention. So again, put yourself in the shoes of the business owner, like, and think about why they'd want their employees in your space.
Yeah, I think some of the larger brands do that quite well. By packaging up the amenities, like, you know, we have an in-house gym. You've been to ones that have in-house saunas and nail bars and everything else. You know, that's kind of an extreme. But again, I just wonder if you bundle that into the package as benefits. Again, should a workspace be viewed as a benefit? I don't really know.
I don't think a workplace, to your point earlier, it's not a benefit. It's a place to get work done. So the question, I mean, if we're hiring in 2026, I would really hope people are asking, where do you do your best work?
I think the likes of Google have a lot to answer for, you know, with their pool tables and their ping pong tables and their ices on a Friday and all that kind of stuff.
Well, they also have a lot to answer for 14-hour workdays, because that was designed that you'd never leave as well.
Yeah, but again, you know, the idea as a package that might sell to somebody who, you know, if you're an employer that could never provide all of those facilities, but now all of a sudden there's a co-working
100%.
space that does all of that, and there's a set fee goes into the profit and loss.
It's a no-brainer from my perspective. But I'm an advocate of co-working again. So, like, as a business owner, if somebody said to me on my team, I want to take a desk here, provided it's not that space I toured in London where it's like £900 a month or £1,200 a month, that might be a bit harder to justify. But if it's a space where they're happy to do work, great. If you ever want to go and visit them, you've got an easy space to go. It's also like such an easy way to say, where are you today? It's not like, you know, I'm working at home, I'm in the dentist, I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere. It's like they actually have one place to go. So if that's something that's important to you as well, for a bit of consistency, that box is also ticked.
You see us do it naturally anyway. If one of the team turns up and they're in the co-working space, you know, we're on a Zoom call with something, we're like, oh, how's it in there today? It's busy, you know. And I'm always a big fan of seeing people getting out and about for work.
And look, we're going to have to start moving things just environmentally, the way the world is moving. We know connection is important. You touched on mental health earlier. It's just a given at this point. I do think employers have to get realistic about the intentionality that goes into choosing jobs these days. People weigh up these things. It's important to them where they are. I think pre-pandemic, people just did what they had to do because the majority of businesses were all running in similar ways. But now there are places that will consider very different ways of allowing you to work. So if you want to be a competitive business owner, even if your business is small in a local area, people are selective about, you know, does this person actually respect or care about the way I want to work? So working hours is a huge thing for people, always has been. Can I pop out and collect the kids? If I work, you know, really late one evening, can I take an hour a day the following week? Whatever the case might be, that's kind of a done thing. I see location in where you work as, you know, becoming that obvious. Unless you physically need to be in a processing plant or on a production line or like something that you need to be physically there, obviously the services. Outside of that, you know, for the 9 to 5 work, it's just a given that you can select where you want to be at, I think. And for operators, they need to be considering this as an audience, if it's valuable to them. How are they speaking to them and making it easy to interact? And then if they're in a populated area, to your point, maybe they're not. But if they are, how are you making sure that it's obvious you're the right choice for your team to be in your space versus another, you know? Considering that business owner might never cross the threshold, you know? People are moving away from offices. Real estate are like putting in co-working. So who are they selling these spaces to if they're not considering business owners, you know? It has to become a very like natural pivot. And then you get into, you know, we've had chats with people about collaboration and the potential for creating experiences. So if you actually want to like activate your members then, and brands want to get clever, like business owners, not co-working brands, business owners want to get clever about activating their employees, Do you take it to another level again and collaborate in a meaningful way with co-working spaces? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
particularly in a local place, there's no end to what you can do with small businesses if you lean into it. And a rising tide, So there's a lot of potential in it if you're actually looking to, I would really look to have like a list of local businesses that you kind of partner with, because people do know about co-working and that's great, and there's still some work to be done on that level. And I think we're like down the road now on the next level of people realizing co-working can be for people who are in
But
9 to 5s.
that's a point. That's a point that we were chatting about one time, and it was like, oh, I know what co-working is, but it's not for me because fill in the blank. It's not for me because I do calls. Is one pushback I often hear. It's like, I do calls as well.
You're probably on a call when you were saying it to them.
Probably on a call when I was saying to them. What other reasons did you get pushback? It's not for me because I need secure internet. Most places will give you your own line if you want it,
Yeah, things are so much more mature in the co-working space than people realize as well. But I mean, all of that is just an education gap. And like operators, I think it's so useful to be out in your community, not in your bubble, thinking everyone knows who you are and what you do. So when we talk about becoming aware of other audiences that are available that you could potentially transact with or sell to, that's what that means. It's like really get into their shoes. Do they know you exist? Why would they care? They're busy, and they might be like, nah, look, she's at home, she's fine, she's in the box room, she hasn't said anything about it. It's like, yes, but
I think for me, an easy, just thinking as you're talking there, an easy client type for me would be the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 desk office. So I don't know, think of a small accounting firm, like they don't need an office for 6, 7 people. A lot of accounting is being done at home. Bookkeeping has been done at home on behalf of people. The one thing with running an office is you have to organize if there's coffee. You have to organize getting it cleaned. You have to, and again, I know internet companies will generally charge you more if you're a business. And then UK specific, I suppose, there's a big hype about rates at the moment and how that's going to affect small businesses. So if that's done, and again, I'm not too up to speed on it, but if that was done correctly, if the co-working industry in the UK angled it correctly, they could drive more people into co-working spaces. I'm sure I could be wrong on how the structure of that's working out at the moment, but I just think for me, if I was a small 4 or 5 man operation in above a shop, like a lot of accounting, small accounting firms are, I think they'd be an easy sell.
So why do you think it hasn't happened yet?
Again, it's just, it's not for me. It's trying to get people to try it out,
Because the rate of adoption's like not the fastest, I have like friends, members of my family who I can think of that I've said, would you not pop down to the co-working in? And in one situation, I think I said this to you, the local place is actually limited. And because during the pandemic, so many people moved out of the city, they moved into these suburbs. And what became small local spaces found themselves in demand. So they're actually full.
Yeah, I get that.
So then, and see, I guess typically a lot of people who work for traditional businesses were in commuter areas and things. So are we just in this kind of post-pandemic window where spaces haven't yet been opened up, like additional spaces haven't opened? You know what I mean? I'm thinking outside the major cities.
I think, well, in Ireland anyway, as the market I can lean on the most is urban and rural are catered for very well. I think suburbs are where the massive opportunity is in the Irish context.
We've talked about it. I could name 5 right away I can think of that I know for a fact are full of people sitting in their sitting room because they used to drive to work. They're within 20-25 minutes of, and there's no co-working. And if you wanted co-working, you'd have to go further out, away from where you live, or you'd have to go into town. And that's the whole point, is that you don't want to go into town. So maybe the adoption...
So what your question is there? What your question there is... Yeah, with your question there is, do I drive 20 minutes or do I drive half an hour into the countryside, or do I spend 30 minutes sitting in traffic, for what could be
No. So like there's a balance there around sometimes we get an unclear view of the market. We're like, oh, there's not that many 9-to-5ers here. Business owners must not know that this is a thing. Maybe actually the idea of approaching that audience there's a whole other consideration in that they're physically not in the right place. Just because the way work evolved, they happen to be closer to, and a lot of people lived in cities. It's an age thing, the way you start out in the city centre having the crack with all your friends, walking to work, pints after work, and then you gradually move out as people have kids and stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And then they end up on a rock looking over the Atlantic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a few factors there. I think operators need to constantly be considering who else they can sell to outside of the typical norm, rather than how do I get more of that type of person? Is there a different type of person I can cater to as well, and how can I do that well?
Coming back to the top of the chat, the audience, the potential customer base is broader, richer. And I mean that in all senses, really. Larger corporates are looking at it now. So yeah, I suppose, as you said, start rethinking. You might have thought you knew what your ICP was. If you're lagging or slowing in growth, or you're struggling to fill up those empty desks, maybe go back to the drawing board, have a relook at your ideal personas and all that, do those kind of exercises again.
And as with any move like that, consider your boundaries around it, because if you're going to start taking in workers, then what's too many? An outfit that has 8 employees and they're all spread in different areas are probably never going to come in and take over your office. But if they're a 25-person company, you might actually end up with 18 of them in your space. So, and we've seen that happen. And how do you know when to release them into the wild and ask them to move on? And it's fantastic. We love growth. If their team continues to grow, you let them go. So new level, new devil. There's an opportunity in it, but you also need to be prepared to make sure it's still a fit for the space. But I do think there is a sustainability to that's on offer to operators if they could crack into that market. And from everything I've heard, that's something that would really benefit a lot of operators, is consistency of sales.
Sure.
So it could be really one to tap into for the year ahead.
Perfect. Great. Thanks for that, Anne-Marie.
No bother.
Thanks for tuning in to Flex That Worx. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss our next episode. Connect with us on LinkedIn, watch the full episode on YouTube, and you can explore free tools and resources over at baseworks.co. This is Flex That Worx, powered by Baseworks, here to help you scale your workspace, making it simpler and less stressful.